We have one of the few airports in the country that has a certified biologist that works full-time on the airfield, looking at the patterns of all the different types of wildlife and looking for the types of trees that attract wildlife.
There's a real diversity of vegetation. There's a lot of foodstuffs that in nature that they use, and one of them is the madrona berry.
Well, maybe there's a quote from Dennis Bulman when I first started. He goes, remember, whatever you do at the airport, something's going to like it. And if it doesn't cause an issue, it may attract something else that will. So my name is Steve Osmek. Began in 2000, April of 2000, and my title is Wildlife Biologist. It started off in 1976, and Dennis Bulman at the time, he was I believe still, the first wildlife biologist in North America at any airport, if not the world. He was over at the seaport, and his role there was to deal with pests in the grain terminal. And when they realized that they were having huge starling populations, European starlings, here at the airport, that they realized they had to do something about it.
In 1960, there was a tragedy in Boston where there was a passenger jet that crashed and it killed 62 passengers. And what's really surprising about that is the kinds of birds that were in this flock that created the bird strike that led to this tragedy in Boston. The same kinds of birds that we see around SeaTac.
U.S. Air Force came out along with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They did one of the first wildlife hazard assessments of any airport. And there were flock sizes of over 100,000 birds. And fortunately at that time, there weren't a lot of aircraft. There were just a lot of birds. So they were having bird strikes. They pulled Dennis over and asked him to be and help manage, this wildlife project, which was huge. In 2001, when I got here, with the growing number of raptors, red-tailed hawks especially, that we were having, we decided to do a raptor strike avoidance program.
The Raptor Strike Avoidance Program has moved over 1,200 birds of prey since it started in 2001.
So we were trapping raptors, banding them, putting wing markers on them, and those birds would be released about 90 miles north of here. And we'd be keeping track of how many birds were returning. And the return rate has still been less than 10%. So it's been fabulous.
We have 4 full-time airport wildlife biologists now, so we split up the duties, and that would be going out on the airfield, checking all of our airfield traps. We have 10 that are out in the airfield at any given time. So we're checking traps, we're checking the cameras that we have on the traps that help us monitor them. We have trap smart units on all of the traps, so we're all making sure that those are in working order.
So these are the new trail cameras that one of the biologists bought for us, and now we can actually get a picture on our phone and says, oh, is there a bird in the trap? Not only is there a bird, but what kind of bird do we have, which tells us what our response needs to be.
Some of the biggest challenges for the wildlife program is that we can't control all wildlife in the area. We can't control everything in the environment. And so though we might do our best to try to mitigate some of the attractants and try to change the habitat around the airport to reduce those attractants, there's always going to be birds in the sky. There's always birds moving in. We can't control how many of them pass through the airport. We can just do our best to try to prepare for them and mitigate those risks as they appear, but as long as there's wildlife, we'll always have work to do at the airport.
When Dennis Bulman came by, he took over the pest control program at the airport as well, since that's what he was doing over there at the seaport. So not only was it everything outside the airport and with wildlife-related issues, but inside as well. So, in fact, I think today we're still the only program that deals with both pest issues and also wildlife issues. So the scope goes out even further because of FAA advisory circulars. We're looking at hazardous wildlife attractants out to 5 miles from the airport.
Port of Seattle, SeaTac Airport has been a leader in a lot of different ways with wildlife management, including the avian radar. We have the FOD detection system, and the work that we even do with Raptors with our relocation program will help drive some of the industry.
I think there's going to be a lot more reliance on technology to help reduce those near-miss events. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is looking into the future is our avian radar right now does not have any camera associated with it. So when you see this blip going across the sky, you can get some idea of the size and the hazard that this bird or birds may have, but we really don't know what it is. And if we can get a camera on it, then we can get the human in the loop and say, yes, this is a flock of gulls versus crows, and we're going to handle that situation very differently.
I think in the future, as we continue to collect data and show that the system works and that we have that support from other airports as well, and employing those technologies to really support what we're doing here, showing that it works. And I think it can only get better from here the more that we incorporate some of that new technology that we're looking at.
It's interesting that Seattle having the first wildlife biologist on staff, it's so important, and it's really under-recognized. And part of that is because there hasn't been a tragedy. And to have an airport that has the volume of SEA, to have that volume and to not have a fatality from a bird strike is amazing. I don't think you would be able to have that statement to say we've never had a fatality from a bird strike if it wasn't for the innovation of the biologists and the supporting staff and the forward thinking of the port staff.